think that, for parents and teachers alike, I think that the big fear with focusing on these kind of positive stories is always that we don't want to be victimized because of our optimism.
Hmm.
I think it's a fear-based thing where it's like, well, if I tell my kids that like you go outside and most of everyone's going to be nice to you, I don't want them to get hurt by like a stranger or by somebody who maybe is dangerous. And so I think for a lot of parents, that's like the big concern. How do you suggest that people kind of communicate a little bit of like, don't be naive, don't get in the truck with the guy who's got the puppies, but also sometimes there's just like a pet store down the road, and sometimes it's okay to look at the puppies,
Right.
I think that's super aligned with things that we concern ourselves with Upworthy. Is the last thing we want is to encourage people to put their head in the sand, to Gabe's point, and view the world through a Pollyanna rose-colored glasses way. There are issues, there are things that we need to be aware of. But I also think, giving kids, in this case, opening their eyes to the possibility, at least, that there are good people in the world as well. A counterbalance, counteracting like just one siloed narrative is just as important. A lot of the stories in this book have very heavy themes. It's not all puppies and rainbows. And I think being able to understand that from, some goodness can come out of things that are rooted in hardship. Giving kids a more realistic approach of how the world can be difficult and how life can be difficult, but also beautiful things can come from that. Is super important. But I also feel for you as a teacher. I'm not a teacher, and so I can only imagine knowing how much influence you have on young kids, and wanting them to be protected would be really hard, for sure.
Yeah. You don't want to put yourself at risk. Obviously, you need to first and foremost, you got to protect your kids and you got to protect yourself. But there's a balance, right? It's kind of like when you think about love. It's like, well, I'm not going to love somebody because I may get hurt. And then you kind of live a closed off life as a result. I think that there is a balance between like being, naive and overly trusting, and maybe teaching your kids and teaching yourself, because this is something that everyone needs to do, to reflect on the goodness in the world. Maybe just think back, okay, how was I good to people today? How were people good to me today? How have people been good to me in my life? Even staying with those moments can have a profound effect. And, you don't necessarily need to think, well, I didn't get into this stranger's van to help them with their puppies, so I'm a bad person. It's like, no, that's okay. That's a fine decision you made.
He's fine. He's fine.
Right. Yeah. It reminds me of right before, it was actually on election day, I posted a video to my fellow educators saying like, hey guys, like regardless of what happens, because at that point we didn't know what the results were going to be, but we all knew as a nation, regardless of what the results are, we're going to have some upset kids in our classroom. And so our job as teachers is to be like a positive space, a safe space, just let them feel however they feel about it. And let them know they're going to be okay in the context of like in your classroom, they are, you are a safe place for them, and all of that, focusing on the positive. And when I posted that initially, I didn't get too much pushback, but then later after the results came out, it was very interesting because I got pushback from both sides. I got pushback from people who said like, why wouldn't they feel safe? Things are great now. And then other people who were like, things are terrible now. Why, like, how could they possibly feel safe? And so, but really what my message is your classroom should be a safe place. That should be a place where kids are able to have that balance of seeing the good, that like some people are going to be a good, safe place for you, regardless of what's going on outside the classroom, regardless of how you feel about the election. It's going to be okay while you're in my class. I'm going to make sure that this place is a good, safe place for you. So yeah, it has been, and especially, with the content that I create, it's, comedy based, and it's a lot of satire and teacher comedy and stuff like that. But my goal is always to do a lot of what you guys are talking about, where it's giving teachers, like, I try very hard not to bash the teaching profession. I try very hard to never make it seem like I think it's bad to be a teacher, but to also recognize some of the struggles. And sometimes that can be a bit of a balancing act because for people who have had a bad teaching day, they sometimes don't want to hear the positive of that. Do you guys ever get any like negative comments about the positive stories that you share, or are they pretty positive?
When you're reaching as many people as we do, and sometimes when you're reaching hardly anyone, you're going to get comments across the spectrum. People can find a reason to nitpick anything that is posted. And sometimes you can play a game. It's like, find the nice thing on the internet and see why someone said it's bad,
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, this dog is really cute. Well, you're actually petting it wrong, and that's causing it emotional distress. Don't pet your dog like that. That's the worst thing you can do.
Right.
We're lucky because our community has grown around seeing the good. Right. And so the folks on Upworthy in the comment section, which we call the kindest comment section on the internet, they leap to each other's defense if things are happening. And they kind of do the work for us in terms of, regulating the purpose and point of the page to share human decency with each other.
Upworthy is almost a beautiful exception to getting a ton of negativity because the content we put out is rooted in, leading with humanness, like the idea of being human. Because at the end of the day, we all sort of want the same things, right? It's like safe community for our kids, education, food on the table, being able to celebrate the beautiful things in life, young people, old people, pets, all the things. And that has nothing to do with identity politics. And so it's sort of this refreshing place, so to speak, for these millions of people to come where they know they're not going to be, finger pointed at. And I think on both sides of the political spectrum in this case, it's really important to have a place like that, and so I think that could also be hopefully applied to the classroom as well.
Thank you so much for watching. Want more of Those Who Can't Do in your life? Well, you can watch the full episode right now. Just click on that little box over there. You see it? Right down there? There it is. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Okay, bye.